Hello, everybody. So I'm thinking, like I very often do, the great question, life's great question: how do you get better at chess? It's really fascinating. I think that you either play. It's a case of, right. We can all play at our best, right? That is defined by how fast we can think, our general IQ, knowledge of the game, knowledge of patterns, all that kind of thing informs that. Or we can play below our best, right? So I think the easiest way to get better results at chess is to play at your best all the time. And that sounds really stupid and kind of oversimplistic, but it's not. All right, just check this out. Right, we'll look at the last kind of 10 rapid games that I've played. I want to look at this one in a minute, because I played this morning very much with this kind of at the front of my mind. I was thinking about playing at my best, and I got 94.7 accuracy on there. Yeah, so there I got 94 accuracy. I've played a bunch of blitz games just for fun. There I got 65, and that's the game that I shared. Yeah, 65. Then 71, 91 over 21 moves. So you're really looking at things over 20 moves to get a really good idea of accuracy. Because here I've got 99.3, but it's a 6-move game. I completely trousered somebody. Yeah. There 93, another 99.5, but again that's 8 moves. And here, terrible, 55. And then 88, and then 99 again over 12 moves. So what does this tell us? What does this tell us about the way that I've been playing? Well, look at this, 42 moves, 94 accuracy. That means that pretty much 19 times out of 20, I'm finding either the best move or something near as damn it the best move. Okay, that's my understanding of what this accuracy means at the moment. But some of the time, I'm playing like... So, put it this way. I would say that when I'm playing at my best, I'm probably playing 200 points higher than my rating. I am probably capable of playing a 1700 game, as things stand. Currently, my rapid rating is 1499, right? And by the same token, when I am undisciplined, because that's all it is. It's not that my IQ doesn't change from game to game. My knowledge and experience of chess and my pattern recognition doesn't change from game to game, right? What changes is my discipline. It's to do with my own mental focus and application on the game. And it's the same for you, Pilgrim. Yeah? So you are probably... Your potential is probably a couple of 100 points higher than your rating right now if you play your best all the time, or near as damn it your best. So, what I'm thinking about is I'm also thinking about there's a principle called Kaizen, which I learned from kind of business consulting, stuff like that. And Kaizen is a Japanese word, and it basically means continual improvement. You're always trying to improve. And when it comes to business systems, what you do is you say, okay, well, look, here is my process for example, a customer complaint comes in, right? What do you do? And what we do, I mean, it's very kind of dry and whatever, but this is how you manage large businesses or even small ones. You have a process that you follow. And then you work through like a flow diagram, yeah, or in our case, the checklist, and you follow it through. And if it fails, then you look at it and you say, okay, well, was it the process that failed, or was it, BioWare error? Is it human error, right? And then if it's the process, you fix the process. And if it was a human error, as in dickhead here didn't follow the process, then you reprimand dickhead, and then that's fine, okay? Or you can say, is there a way in which we can improve the process to help mitigate human error? And that's what I want to look at with our chess, right, going forward. So, and in our case, what the main tool I've got here is the checklist. Okay, so what I propose to do, and I might find some time today to do 1 or 2 games using the checklist, but we'll probably do like 60-minute games, yeah? Because you really have to take your time. So yeah, I want to do that. I want to use the checklist and say, well, did I get high accuracy? Did I win the game? Right? If I didn't win the game, then look through and say, well, did I apply the checklist? If not, it's my fault, right? If I did apply the checklist, then where did the checklist break down? And can I improve the checklist so it gets better over time? So I've made a couple of changes today. So let's have a look at this game. Right, so yeah, we know I won. Okay, so it's a 15 plus 10. My opponent is from Azerbaijan, rated about 1420, I guess, at the time. Oh, 1494, yeah, 1417. Okay, now, so I've got the checklist open on the side, and we're not going to rush. Okay, first few moves, e4, e5. Guess what I play? Knight c3. Now, I didn't think there, because that's theory. I knew it already. I know this works out well. Copycat, step 1, bishop c4, right? Again, I know this. Now we get knight to f6. So just looking at the timings here. So I spent 0.1 seconds, 1.5, 1.8, and now I spend 4.6 seconds because I have to think. I'm just checking in my mind, my memory of, so in my notes, this is called the semi-copycat. And there's a couple of approaches. Knight to f3 is fine. Right? This pawn is under attack and it's defended. Okay. So yeah, knight to f3 is fine. d3 is fine to release the bishop. But the move that I'm wanting to play is this f4. Right? This is what I've got in my notes. It's aggressive. It mixes things up, and it's still related to the Vienna Gambit. Okay, so we've got ideas of clearing the f-file, castling short and getting the rook straight on the f-file. Okay, so with this in mind, because I have a relationship with the Vienna game, I know the general ideas. Okay, now if you don't have relationships with your openings, if you are an opening hoe, right, and you're always trying different openings, and you're jumping from opening to opening and never waking up in the same bed twice, then it's hard to maintain or build up that kind of library in your brain of what the ideas are going to be later on. Okay, so my opponent now plays h6. Now, immediately I say to myself, well, that's a bit slow, right? I know it doesn't do anything to help him develop, right? All that he's created is the possibility of rook h7. And why would you want to do that? So I guess what he's doing is, so let's go to the checklist, right? Now let's go checklist. Okay, is my king safe? Yes, right now there is nothing that can give check, right? You've got knight takes there, isn't an issue. Knight to here, maybe, but it's not check, right? So right now my king isn't even threatened. Okay, if my opponent had to win, if op had to win, could they? Not right now. I don't see, like I said, there's no threats whatsoever. We're on move 4. Is my opponent's king safe? Yes, relatively. If I had to win, could I? Not right now. No, we haven't developed enough. Why did my opponent make that last move? Great question. Is he wanting to control this square? Because he's just kind of uncontrolled this one. Yeah? I don't know. I really don't know. Is he wanting to prevent g4, g5? Or does he think that I want to put a knight on that square? That's all I know. Any immediate... hang on. What changed on the board? Okay, well, he pushed this pawn, which means he undefended this and is now defending this. Right? And the rook can now move to here. In theory, also the knight could retreat to there as well as to there. But that's all a bit silly. What's now on prise or under defended? Well, I'm attacking that pawn and it's defended once. However, f-pawn takes e-pawn is generally a good thing because I'm capturing towards the centre, leaving my opponent with only one pawn in the central two columns. Okay. Anything under defended? No. That's attacked and defended. Everything else is fine. Okay. Any immediate risks or opportunities? Not right now. I mean, there's a possibility of pawn takes here, which we need to consider. Other than that, I want to be thinking about development. Now, like we said, in fact, let's put up a... okay, let's do list the positives and negatives of each candidate move, right? Okay. So, this is a candidate move that we should consider. I think probably knight f3 is a good candidate move. It's behind Freddie, gets ready to castle. That's perfectly good. But, so with this one, okay, so I do want to develop, however, there is a tactical opportunity. And the tactical opportunity is capturing towards the centre. Now, if I do this, knight recaptures is almost certain. And then if knight does recapture, I have d4. Okay, so he's got his knight on here, and I've got a nice pawn centre. I'm attacking his knight, and the knight is going to have to retreat, so we've got a kind of Halloween gambit, or Vienna Halloween line idea, okay? Other candidate moves, doesn't really make sense. I'm moving a developed piece twice, maybe d3. d4 isn't an option because it's attacked twice, that square. And I couldn't recapture with the queen, that would be my only defender. So yeah, knight f3 really, or takes, or maybe d3. Okay, so which improves my position? Well, I like the fact that I'm removing a central pawn if I do that one. Is there another possible move? This is a really, really good question. Okay, is there something that I've missed? And just get into the habit of every move. Think of another one. So how about f5? Right, f5 will make life a bit harder for this bishop. Can't come out to there. Squeezes stuff down. If he tries to move the g pawn, I can take and open up the king. You know, it's a thought. But in the end, I decided to capture on e5. Okay, and he recaptures. Now, with this move, what just changed? Well, my bishop is under attack. Okay, that's important. Is my king safe? Yeah. Is my opponent's king safe? Yeah. Why did my opponent make that last move? It's a recapture. He doesn't want to be down in material. And of course his knight was under attack. Okay, not rocket science. So, main issue is, you know, immediate risks, yes. My bishop is hanging, as in it's under attack and it's not defended. Okay, all the possible candidate moves. That doesn't really help because it takes me a step back in my castling ambitions. This blocks in the queen, also takes a square away from the knight. This could still be captured, and the only way to recapture would be c takes, and that would leave me with doubled and isolated d-pawns. Not good at all, precious. This is an idea. He may decide to take me off. Does that make my position much better? Not really. Okay. And one that you should consider probably is bishop takes f7 check. And if king takes, do we have a nice queen fork or whatever? But now, you see, with these knights, both on dark squares here, he's got very heavy control over light squares, right? Some of these he's protecting twice. These two, yeah? So he's got a lot of dark square control. He doesn't have good light square control right now. So I want to protect my bishop, and simply I drop back to b3, okay? That improves the bishop to some degree. It's still on the tender diagonal of doom, right? Looking down at f7. It's also now defended twice, and it's also defending this pawn, which was previously defended only by the queen, okay? So, you know, if you're talking about listing all the positives and the negatives of a move, there's nothing really not to like. The only downside of this is that I've been forced to move a piece that I've already developed a second time. Okay, so now my opponent plays c6. Okay, so is my king safe, etc.? Yes. Why did my opponent make that move? Key question. I'm thinking he wants to support d5. That's the most likely hypothesis. Now on d5, I've got 1, 2, 3 attackers. If he pushes d5, he's going to have 1, 2, and 3 defenders. Right, so there's nothing gained by capturing on d5. And if he plays d5, if he gets d5 in, this bishop is suddenly disenfranchised. Right? This bishop's purpose in life is to stare at Freddy. Okay? Maybe with the ideas of a queen or a knight or something coming in and causing havoc down there. So this move, I don't really want to allow him to do that. Now, there's lots of ways that you can then approach things. So, is there anything on prise or under defended? No. This is on prise and it's defended, so it's not hanging. Okay, and he's not going to do that because he'd be giving up a knight for a pawn. Any immediate risks or opportunities? Well, yes, because d4, right? We've got this Halloween-y setup, and d4 makes a lot of sense. I am grabbing some space in middle of board, right? I'm hitting the knight, so it comes with tempo. Hello, Morgan. What do you want? Okay, right? It comes with tempo. His central knight, he's got a knight right in the center of the board, which is good for him, not so good for me because it's controlling lots and lots of squares. Yeah? So why not kick the knight? So that's one candidate move. This is a possibility, also hits the knight. So developing is good, but this really is a developing move as well because it's required to allow me to develop my dark square bishop. So on balance, well, in the space of 14 seconds, I chose to go for d4. Okay, we're both actually above 15 minutes at this point, but that's kind of normal in an opening. However, I'm familiar with this opening. I think maybe you could argue my opponent has played too quickly at this point. So we've got that. I'm hitting the knight. He's got to do something. The knight retreats to g6. Okay, and this is looking kind of, tortoise-like and kind of solid. However, if you check out the position now, right, development, 2 each. Okay, pawn development and central control, it's all white, right, because he allowed me to capture there. Okay, and so he's just moved that knight and it's white to play. Okay, so I really do have almost like you could argue an advantage of 2. So, is my king safe? Yes, right now he is. Okay, this queen can't develop properly. This bishop can't develop at all. This bishop can only develop on this diagonal, and he can't go there. That doesn't really do much. I mean, it's possible. Pins the knight. Can't go there. That's not very good because it shuts off that, and that's a bit silly. Okay, so why did my opponent make that last move? Saving his ass. What just changed on the board? Okay, so the knight moved to here. Now he has knights on 2 different colours. Okay, and that means he controls a lot more squareage. Okay, and that's a good thing. Having your knights next to each other, you control a lot of squares in a ring around those knights. So not too bad. Other than that, I've got good control over the centre, blah, blah, blah. What are all the candidate moves? Okay, now, if we follow this process, it's probably going to take like 2 hours to go through. So, but you get the idea of the checklist and the new and improved checklist. So let's accelerate a bit and go through, and we'll just point out any kind of key points because you're going to get bored, and so am I if we do this. But the point is this: use your checklist. I mean, you can use this one, you can modify it, you can make up your own, doesn't matter. But the idea of Kaizen is, did the checklist fail or did I fail? And clearly in this game I didn't because I got nearly 95% accuracy. So now I play knight f3. Why? I'm developing a piece, +1, ping, preparing to castle, ping, and get my rook on f1, ping. So, I'm literally thinking in terms of plus, ping, minus ping, negatives. Demerits, okay? Good central control. Knights on natural squares. I've got tremendous control over the middle of the board now. My opponent plays bishop b4. We saw this move. Now you have to stop and calculate, right? In terms of what's changed. Okay, so there's a cascade of stuff. Bishop attacks knight, okay? Knight is pinned, cannot move, okay? Also, knight is sole defender of e4 pawn. e4 pawn, he under attack, okay? You can see the sequence of stuff. And that creates a problem. So if I just do something naff, yeah, just a non-move, he takes my knight. If I recapture with b takes c3, Eddie is suddenly undefended and the knight takes. Now, perhaps I could pin the knight with a queen move or a rook move, yeah? But, and the knight would be undefended as well. So, black would have to defend on the next move, but probably queen e7, okay? So I now a red light starts going off, woo woo, right? Now we have a problem to solve. Okay, so currently that's defended only once. Now I could, for example, play queen e2, defend the pawn another time. So if he wants to take my knight, go ahead, knock yourself out. My queen now defends the pawn, and everything's fine. So that's a candidate move, right? It solves the problem. It's like a mathematical problem. It's actually a logic problem, right? Other ideas. Bishop d2, okay, breaks the pin on the knight. And so now if he wants to take the pawn, he loses his knight. Not good. Now if he takes the knight, I can recapture with b takes. No. So it doesn't solve my problem, does it? So bishop d2, yeah, doesn't solve my issue. Okay, now, is there another possible move? Well, as it happens, there is. So I then thought about the move that I went on to play, e5. e5, sir. I'm attacking the knight, okay, from here. Now, surely he's going to play knight e4 to here. Then he's got two attackers on there, right? But if he does that, so let's say I do this, he does this. Now, counting attackers and defenders, got two attackers on this knight. It's defended only by Barry the b-pawn, but then I can play bishop d2. And if he wants to take my bishop with his knight, he can do it. So queen takes. And I'm okay, right? So I do play e5 here. And now he moves his knight to there. So similar deal. The difference is he's not looking at the d2 square. Okay? And we have two attackers on here. Okay? So you could probably add count attackers and defenders for any attacked pieces onto your checklist if you need, if it's not second nature. Right? So two attackers on here. Again, candidate moves. Now, moving the knight isn't legal. I can't do it. So we can forget all about that. Not possible. Bishop d2 makes sense. Queen d2 makes maybe less. Knight can't defend it. Something needs to be done. Otherwise, because if I, for example, let's say I just castle, okay, we've got, knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, I'm down a pawn, and he's attacking my rook. Okay, so consider all the options. 20 seconds, no, 9.5 seconds. Bishop d2, right? Develops a piece, breaks the pin, properly defends the knight. Okay, now he decides to take with his bishop, and I kind of get that, right? I'm now building a dark squared pawn chain, which makes life harder for his dark squared bishop, right? So his thinking is that knight is probably a better piece than my dark squared bishop, and he's got a case. Also, he's got a risk here. If I take there, if he recaptures, he's got isolated and doubled d-pawns. So he takes, okay? I have a think. 37 seconds now, right? Because I have two clear candidate moves. B takes or bishop takes. Now, I'm thinking that because I've got a dark square pawn chain, again, my dark square bishop is now weaker than my light square bishop. Okay. I also want to make sure that I can still open up this bit of the board. So I need to consider what happens if I take with a pawn. Okay. Yes, I've captured towards the center. Ping +1. Okay. However, I'm not really going to want to push my pawn forward from there. You know. So yeah, I'd have a good structure in the middle if I take with that pawn, but I can't really convert it at this point and start pushing pawns forward without making, without blocking off my own bishop. So in the end I choose bishop takes, okay, and now he plays knight takes and b takes, okay. I'm not really convinced with that move, because now look, I've got a very strong kind of pawn structure in the middle. I've got a very strong bishop here that's anchored to these two pawns. I'm getting ready to castle and get my rook on a semi-open file, and life is good. And his bishop is poor, right? So I think those trades haven't really worked out in his favour. He castles, so do I, right? Putting my rook on the semi-open file. Also, rookie is now looking down at f6. Also, notice what else has changed. f6 is pinned. This is important, and this plays a big part in the rest of the game. This pawn is pinned, and this pawn is the only defender of that knight. Okay, and if you've got a pinned piece that is the only defender of something else, it's not a defender. So this knight is actually undefended, right? So now I'm thinking about, okay, well, how can I attack the knight? One idea is queen d3, queen takes knight. I'd love to do that. Imagine the surprise on his face, because the pawn's pinned, right? Now, you have to assume your opponent is going to spot these things. So anyway, he now plays d6. Now, what I don't want to happen is d5. Now, if he pushed d5 straight away, I have the option of capturing en passant. Okay, so he's doing this, and he's kind of tempting me to do that, right? I do not want him to lock this off, because Charlie is blocked, right? I'd have to move, then move my bishop, which is very slow. So I decide to capture on there after 8 seconds thought, okay? Queen probably recaptures, there we go, and now queen d3. So, okay, I'm setting up this idea, right? The queen is defending the knight, so that's one of the things that changed. The queen's moved from here where it wasn't defending the knight to d6 where it is defending the knight now. So why did I play this? Well, I'm laying the foundation for a possible winning attack later on. If this queen ever abandons the defense of the knight on g6, queen takes knight. Pawn can't recapture because it's still pinned. Okay. Also, I've connected my rooks, so that's another plus. Also, I'm defending the knight. Also, I'm defending all these pawns now, right, where I wasn't before. Okay. So this pawn is undefended. Here, everything's defended. Right. I have coordination. Everything on the board is defended at least once. In fact, most things are defended multiple times, and that's a good thing. Right, now, opponent plays c5, and I have a think for over a minute. Right, so, what I would like to do, I'm thinking about how to attack this knight, okay? Also, I noticed that his bishop is now woken up, and then this rook might wake up as well. So, I really ought to be thinking about trying to launch an attack now before he can really engage his pieces. I have more dynamism right now, more activity, more potential on the board. So, candidate moves. Knight here is something that I kept considering, but then if knight takes, if I recapture with the pawn, queen takes, I've just lost the pawn and left myself with doubled isolated c-pawns. Now, this structure with just 2 pawns, if they're isolated, is pretty bad. This structure is far better than this, right? So having my d pawn there, and the reason is because these guys can shuffle up later on, and the rear c pawn can always jump in and recapture if the d pawn is taken. And watch out for these pawns because they do play a part. So in the end, I choose to activate my least active rook, okay, and bring it here, so that I could have ideas, maybe knight here, okay, putting it in the center, which is a bit of a plus, right? And then if knight takes, I don't have to take with the pawn. I could take with the rook, or I could take with the pawn, and then if queen takes, c takes, and I've completely repaired my pawn structure. My pawns will be here, something like that. So that's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking a couple of moves ahead, and thinking, well, if my opponent plays what I think is his best moves, does that leave my position better and his worse, or the other way round? Okay, so here I'm happy. Here I've got both rooks in the game. His rooks aren't really in the game at all. This bishop still hasn't moved, etc., etc. Okay. Now he activates his bishop. Yes, that makes sense, right? He's connecting his rook. Rooks, ping, right? He's also defending this square from my rook, potentially, ping. Okay. So now, King h1. Now, why King h1? Okay. What I want to do is potentially, I think, capture that pawn. Okay. So here is my idea. I take this pawn. Queen can't recapture. Why? Because the queen's the only defender of the knight, so the queen has to stay on the 6th rank. Yeah? To defend the knight, or has to be somewhere defending the knight, which basically means 6th rank. Because she's on the opposite colour square. She can't move diagonally and still defend the knight. She could only move to there. Yeah? So queen has to stay on there. So that's a free pawn. That's my thinking. However, then I noticed, and this is why you have to get into the habit of visualizing what the board is going to be like if this candidate move is played and your opponent plays that. So, right, if this, let's move the king back. If this queen takes, that's not possible. Why? Because I'm in check. Right, king's on g1. I do this, she takes that, and I go, silly me, I'm in check. I haven't got time to take the knight. So what I have to do is then move the king, and then he puts his queen back there. And nothing's, well, he doesn't because I take it, but you see, but nothing's gained. So king h1. And now my opponent plays b5. And now, okay, so I think for only 12 seconds here because d takes c5. Now, queen takes is not an option because now queen takes knight is playable, right? Defended only by a pinned piece. But what about queen takes queen? Okay, well, then I recapture with my c pawn. So my b pawn has become a c pawn, my c pawn has become a d pawn, and I still have, bang, 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 3 central pawns, and the d pawn would be completely unopposed. And let's see what happens with that pawn. Okay, so my opponent realizes this, trades queens. I recapture. Obviously. And that's one of those moves you don't have to think too hard about. The only thing with a move like this would be, do I have an in-between move? Right? Like bishop takes a f7 check, right? Maybe rook takes, but no point in that. Take the queen. Okay, now he plays rook a to e8. And after a jolly good think, 1 minute 24 seconds. So I now have a think. And it's one of those things, you know, this is a very common situation where there's one fully open file on the board and nobody wants to be the guy who takes the rook. Because if I take his rook captures and then he owns the open file. If he takes my rook captures and I own the open file. So here I just push d4. Okay, now this is a lovely situation. I've got a bishop there, buddied up with that pawn. They've both got each other's back, right? I've got 3 pawns on dark squares, so they don't interfere with my bishop. I still have the pin on f7. And my bishop has freedom of movement, right? And I've got good rooks. He's also got decent rooks, although this one's less useful. In fact, this rook can't move right now, so that's not very good. So quite happy. And we have, excuse me, now we're looking towards the end game because the queens are off the board. And we have a 4-on-2 majority on this side of the board, but I'm in a minority on this side of the board, has to be said. Okay, so let's see how it pans out. He trades rooks for reasons known only to himself. Okay, now I'm thinking maybe knight in here might be good because I could take that knight for free, but I'm also attacking his bishop. He would probably have to trade. Okay, and so but if he does that and I recapture with the pawn, that's not good. But now I can recapture with a rook. Okay, so that's not too bad. He puts his rook behind his bishop. Why did my opponent make that move? God only knows. Honestly, I don't know. I can't answer that. Right, now I throw my knight in. Because here's my thinking, right? Now, when we go to, are there any immediate risks or opportunities? If no, go to your default, right? The default in the opening is to develop your pieces. The default in the middle game, improve, build up an attack, and consider pawn breaks if they will improve your situation. In the end game, which is where we are now, your default is to assure the best outcome. So here, I'm a pawn up, right? Because I just got a free pawn. Okay, I have a nice pawn majority on the C and D files. The D pawn is completely unopposed by any other pawn, right? It has to be said I'm in a minority on the king side, okay? But here I'm thinking I've still got a pin, right? Here I'm thinking simplification is no bad thing. If knight wants to take, I've got rook takes, then I can put my rook here, right? Attacking the pinned pawn. Also pinning the bishop, because if the bishop moves, I get that pawn. And I think that from this position, simplifying the game will only help me. So he does take. I do recapture with the rook. Now he offers a trade of rooks. So what would you do in this situation? All right? I think here for 4.9 seconds, and I say, go on then, because I think I've got a winning position. He takes, and now, as with every situation, you evaluate, okay? So I've got a lovely advantage here, right, on these files, C and D, okay? My opponent's pawns can do nothing about this other than this one, okay? But if I push that, he can either push or whatever, and then these two pawns are passed pawns, okay? I have to be careful. So this is the question. How could my opponent win? Well, one way my opponent could win would be somehow gum up my bishop, push these guys up the board, yeah? Supported by the king, maybe supported by the bishop, yeah? Games like this can be lost. So, what I'm thinking now is, but my other thought is, if my king can aid with the defense against the king side pawn push, which will come, it has to come, because otherwise black just loses. It's the only way black can't lose, or can avoid losing, okay? So, I'm thinking, my king needs to help with the defense of something here, right? Now from these squares, he can help defend against the F pawn. And the G and the H pawns can probably handle themselves, right? Particularly with the help of a bishop. But also if my king is around here, okay? So I play king G1, because I'm thinking, I want to get my king around, somewhere around here. Basically stepping on the dark squares, to eradicate this guy and just convert. So he moves his king. King comes up. Now F5. So we'll move a bit quicker through this because there's an interesting move at the end. Now this is a good move, right? Side by side pawns, very effective against kings, because now my king cannot make progress up the board. Can't step on my own pawn. Can't go there, right? I have. The only way up the board would be, right now for this king, would be that. And that would take all day. So it's not going to happen. Okay, so now, and here, I do think, okay, I'm on 11.5 minutes, he's on 9.5 minutes, okay? And we do have some thinking to do. Okay, so here, after only 4 seconds thought, I decide to push d5. What I'm thinking is, I want to put real pressure on here, with these pawns. Okay, I want to keep his bishop having to worry about these pawns. Okay, and I want to overwork his bishop and overwork his king, so he can't kind of support this attack and defend this one effectively. So king comes up, 12 seconds, I push g3. Okay, I'm getting my pawn off a light square, so these pawns are now invisible to this light square bishop. Okay, plus he can't now push the f pawn, because I take, if he recaptures, he's lost another pawn and he's losing. Okay, so he can't do that. So he pushes the h pawn and I push. Okay, some of this is psychology. I'm just putting pressure on him, pressuring his situation. If he takes, I recapture with the bishop. He doesn't, he pushes b4, and now 3 passed pawns. Okay, but you always have to think, okay, how could I lose this game at this point in time? I'm a pawn up. How could I lose? Well, I could lose somehow just by rushing and getting overwhelmed on this side of the board. It's the only possibility. Plus, my bishop is starting to look maybe a bit, useless. It's only got one diagonal, this, and I can't go there because I get took. So, bishop c2 now. And I think I'm winning a pawn because I'm attacking the pawn. Okay, he can't push, as we've said, because takes, he loses a pawn. So I think he's going to have to play his bishop here or his bishop here. But if he plays his bishop here, I've got c6. I've taken one more deadly step up the board, So what does he do? Puts his bishop there, bishop on g6. And now this piece, he's only got 2 pieces left on the board, right? This piece is occupied with the defense of a pawn. Now there is now a risk. You have to spot the risk. Are there any risks? Well, yes. Can you see it? Right? If I just do nothing here, right? f4, check, bang. Okay. Now I can defend the bishop. It doesn't win the bishop. I can move my king back to d2. But then there's a problem. Pawn takes g3. I have to take, and he's got 2 pawns against 1. Okay, maybe not good. So I decide to resolve the problem, get out of a checkable square. Right, I'm on a checkable square here. So king d4. So I really want to come here. Yeah, again, I'm using only the dark squares to hide from him. I want to come to here. I want to support a big pawn push. Bishop can come in, kick the king away. I want to get my pawns up here before Laughing Boy has got any chance to convert one of his. So he now moves his king, and I'm like, thank you very much, c6. Now he starts an attack, and this is a critical point. So I think again 13.9 seconds. Okay, the bishops are facing off. Now my bishop is hanging at this point in time. So, time to stop and think. In fact, this is, I think, one of the best puzzles in the game. Okay? So, candidate moves. I mean, first of all, it might be good for you to pause, take a minute to look at this situation and try and think, what would you do? What are your candidate moves and which one is winning? Because there is a winning move here. In fact, there's probably more than one. So ideas include bishop takes bishop, okay? Maybe pawn takes pawn, but then I take. And look, I only need to, if this bishop's off the board, right, this is the square of this pawn, right? So this king is currently outside of the square, right? So if this king does not come into the square on the next turn, my pawn can promote, unless this light squared promotion square is guarded by this bishop. Now, how can this bishop cover that square? There's only a few places it could go, right? And the only one of those it can reach is f5. My bishop is covering f5. Okay, so I think there's lots of ways to win this. Now, a problem would be, for example, no, I'm thinking if I allow him to take my bishop and then come back here, but I don't think he's got time because it's my go. So if I go c7, yeah, he takes this, I promote. Okay, and that is the move that I play. c7, because I calculated it. He can take my bishop. I don't care. He does. Queen. Okay? So if you got that move, well done. Now he takes a pawn. I just recapture. Right? This is now totally one position. He attacks my queen. I give check. I mean, there's, you know, I could still even sack my queen for his bishop and probably get another queen and punish him that way. But he comes here. I move my king in. Right, now c5. I'm just putting more pressure on. Takes. Okay? Queen here. Staying on the dark squares. King here. Now what I'd really want to do is put my king here, guarding these 3 squares, and then checkmate him like that. That's a classic king and queen mating pattern. But I can't do it because he's got that annoying bishop. So he comes the thing, and I'm thinking queen here. Now would leave only that square for the king, and then I get the pawn. But at this point, black resigns. Okay, so there you go. Very, very good game, I think, on my part. I was very, very happy with that. And I'm particularly happy with my calculation. And that shows that I'm applying discipline. And that shows, and when I do that, I am playing at the level at which I'm capable of playing, right? These are the games where I've lashed out and just grabbed a piece, like, you know, my video from yesterday, You're Like a Baby, right? 65% accuracy, but really it was just one bad move that I made in the blink of an eye, and everything collapsed. Even though I then kept playing a lot of good moves and a lot of best moves, I'd already sabotaged my own position by playing one bad move, and that's the difference. That's how it works, guys. So this game, I didn't do that. This game, I kept my discipline, I kept my focus, and I got the win. So very, very happy. And if I keep playing like this, if I keep playing at 95 accuracy, right, I should probably progress to 1700, 1800. That's the difference, right? So maybe it's almost like the number one thing is, before you sit down to a game, don't think, oh, I'm going to try and grab some cheap rating points, or I'm just going to play chess because I'm bored, I can't think of anything else to do. If you sit down and go, okay, chess brain, do I have time for this game, right? Don't think, oh, I want to squeeze in another game before that call or that meeting that I've got or whatever, appointment, right? Have I got time to give this game my 100% focus, okay? Am I in the frame of mind to give this game 100% focus, right? Am I emotionally in a good place to get my chess brain on? And if the answer to any of those questions is no, then don't play bloody rated rapid chess. Do a puzzle. Play against the bot if you want to play for fun, or if you want to play casually. Don't play casually if you want to improve and if you want to increase your rating. Simple as that. So there you go. So I might do another game later on using the checklist. But for now, that's all I had to say. So thinking Kaizen, right? You know, I think that this checklist is good for an intermediate player, for a beginner player, right? To get you up to the 1500 level or so. And I'm going to keep applying this to say, okay, well, what did I miss? Is there something that needs to go on my checklist, and something that I need to practice the discipline of asking myself on every turn until it becomes second nature, okay? So clearly, Magnus doesn't have a checklist when he's sitting down at the World Championship because it's all in there, right? It's his discipline, it is his habit, it is the way that he works through practice, practice, practice. And if the checklist breaks down, then we try and fix the checklist first of all, okay? That's it, guys. Thanks for watching. See you later.